Hello, welcome to DBR Live. We've just put the message on the channel of the Slack community, 2,500 members in 20 different time zones.
The power.
I'm joined today by the wonderful Sophie Power.
Hello, I'm back.
And the most amazing Joe Weech, who's over in Washington, DC. Thank you very much for joining us, Joe.
Hello.
We're supposed to have Martin Dangerfield on the show as well to talk about this subject, but I'm not sure where he is. So just to make my life exciting, I have pinged him. I'm sure he'll join us in a minute. Today's topic, we're talking about the fine line between recruiting and HR. And how do you walk that fine line? What is it? All that kind of stuff. Before I do that, just to remind you, DBR is the world's largest in-house recruiter community. We hang out on Slack and talk to each other and share ideas and candidates and problems and help each other out. We are hosting events and warming up for next year's season with some awesome events over in London. We're also hosting events in Berlin, Manchester, Leeds, Dublin, Paris. Maybe we'll get to America soon. As those of you that are watching, I can see there's 14 of you watching. Make sure that you have filled out the DBR salary survey. The DBR salary survey, which was launched 3 years ago, is
DBR tech stack at the moment.
It's the tech stack. Oh, it's the tech stack survey. Oh no, major fail. Oh, the tech stack survey teaches people how to teaches you what's going on in the tech space and how the tech thing. And there is Martin as well. Thank you very much for joining us, Martin, today. Can you hear us? Okay. Awesome. Let's Joe, would you like to introduce yourself so that everyone who doesn't know you can get to know you?
Sure. Well, hello and greetings
how you doing?
Across the pond. And I am head of talent at a company that does work for the United States federal government. And it's really quite a regimented place to be. So all of my startup creativity gets squelched before I walk into the door. So it's a lot of fun. I am really trying to change things up. I just did a PowerPoint for the exec committee that actually had pictures in it. They weren't just like points on a template. So they kind of were wowed by that, and it wasn't even that big of a deal. But that's me and my life. So
amazing. And Martin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Hayden. Haven't seen you for a while. You can't hear me, can you?
Yeah, we can. We can hear you.
We can. Oh, cool. I can't hear me. Hey, oh, good news. Okay. Yeah, I'm Martin Dangerfield. I work for Dangerfield. You would have seen it on LinkedIn in big yellow letters saying Dangerfield, and I help companies to hire better. And I guess today is also about that awkward relationship that I have when you're talking about hiring versus talking about HR and people operations and a bunch of other stuff. So yeah, that's me. How you doing? And this is sunny Manchester. You'll see some snow in a minute behind me. It's grim up here. That's it.
I think this is the most international show we've ever had, Sophie. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think so, actually. It's pretty exciting. I'm down in London in Tech Space in Aldgate. It's my actual last official day in Tech Space in Aldgate. Next week I'll be in a WeWork, which is very exciting. So yes, it's very international. I love that. And hopefully we'll have some really interesting different opinions and thoughts and things to share.
We've got loads of people watching live, so just going to remind you all, like the video, send us a comment. We're going to answer your questions today about the topic, the fine line between HR and recruiting. And if you're watching the replay, hit replay on the comments so that we get trending on YouTube. Woo! Sophie, so easily pleased. Sophie, I'm going to leave this one to you to kick off.
Yeah, sure. So speaking of comments, I posted up a link and just a few thoughts on the fine line between HR and recruitment this morning on LinkedIn. I had a really interesting comment from Steve Jacobs. He was meant to be joining, but he's unable to, ironically, because he's been pulled into a HR meeting as senior head of talent. And his key point that he wanted to share with us was, we need to, when we think about this, start off by defining HR specifically and defining recruitment. And made a very good point, actually, that it varies greatly depending on what size company you're in. for example, I've worked in very large global organizations where I've worked in recruitment and I've barely even spoken or seen HR. And I've worked in tiny startups where it's me and a head of people and that's it. And I'll have, sort of employees wandering over to my desk and be like, hey, so I just got a quick question about payroll. And
Yeah.
not a clue. And it's a huge difference depending on sort of what kind of organisation you're in. And the definitions, are quite blurred, I think, because of that. What do you guys think?
So I'll chip in if that's okay. Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think that it's getting more blurred. That's probably right. I think the larger organisations, you're right. There's a definite demarcation, isn't there? There's a talent acquisition function, there's an HR function, and it's always been split between these are people on the way in. So let's talk about talent acquisition, and these are employees. Let's be HR. But with more, I guess, typically smaller, typically newer organisations, that becomes blurred from day one, and I think it stays there from as we go along. I think that slightly grey area is still there. And the fact that you pick up an acquisition pitch, which is about let's go and find some candidates, but then you're responsible for hiring them, and then you're responsible for onboarding them, and then you're sort of interested in them as you go along. So it's not as clear cut as it once was. So I'd agree with Steve in some respects that it's maybe about the size of the organisation, and also actually in equal measure, I think it depends on the type of organisation you work for. Does that help?
Yeah, maybe. Joe, what do you think?
I don't know.
Well, here in the US, I would say that it's really a painful thing. But when you say HR generalist, that includes recruiting. And I can assure you that the people who are managing the benefits, managing 401ks, managing, all of the paperwork that has to be filed on a regular basis, their recruitment skills they don't even know what a Boolean string is. And I'm absolutely not making that up. So I think that also when they have HR and recruiting comes in under HR. And that's really not a great place for recruitment to be. I really believe that HR and talent need to be standalone. And then they have a partnership where they collaborate, because really when you look at recruitment, what is that? Employer branding, it is marketing, it's doing everything to attract the right candidate, coming up with the content to attract people, and then it's that whole process of bringing them in. Once they're in, there has to be a smooth transition, and to your point, Martin, we need to still be involved in these. It's like equal worth but separate function altogether.
Is that because of the behaviour, do you think, that acquisition and recruitment by default is going out into the marketplace, talking to people? So we need that demarcation. I still feel that they said that it gets grey as you get towards onboarding. Who does the onboarding? Is that a recruiter? Is that talent acquisition? Is that HR? And I guess it depends on the organisation again. Some places it's definitely HR, but in other cases it really isn't. It's who's the most appropriate person. They know the candidate. So why not walk them around the building? Why not show them to the manager's seat? Why not do those other bits and pieces? I think it's not as clear cut. I think it's not as clear cut as it was. I know in the US it is much simpler. And as you say, you've got the recruiter function playing underdog almost to HR. That HR have got the big strategic conversation, of which recruitment is one element. But I think when you think about talent in its broadest sense, that's again a different debate for a different time about where HR and where recruitment sit in the various pieces. But it's not. I don't think it's as clear cut as it once was. I think that's why it's starting to become blurred. Probably maybe you said, tech startups and scale ups, they've blurred it a lot more.
I think for me, right, I'm going to answer this question because at the end of the day, we're all there to help the managers do their job better and grow their teams, right? So as a recruiter, I want to help that person as much as I can up to the point of onboarding, but that's as much as I can do because I don't know about what happens next, really, as a manager. And I would be doing the manager the disservice by telling him that I know how to do HR. What do you think, Sophie?
Very good question. Sorry, there is a lot of background noise where I am. It's usually lunchtime, but it's now power hour in the office. one of the upside downsides of sitting in the sales team. So I think, yeah, I mean, it's tricky. I am completely losing my train of thought. I've got
for a moment while you're gathering your thoughts. You know, I did it. I did a prezzo at Disrupt HR DC, and the topic was talent at the table. Why, you know, people in talent actually are business partners, because the when the company execs are deciding on the future and deciding what types of roles and how they're going to fund those roles or whatever, if you're not engaging talent and saying, can we do this? Can we actually vet these sorts of candidates at this price point? And once we stop laughing and pull ourselves back up onto the chair, you know, we can give meaningful data analytics to be able to partner with them to achieve the goals that they want, but they have to be within reality. And when you have talent that far removed, you know, from the business structure, it doesn't make any sense, because then it's sort of like, okay, now we're going to let talent do this, and you've made a case for something that's really going to not be doable or sustainable. And they sometimes have HR at the table, but they don't think to include talent. And I think that talent really needs to be at the table.
Sophie, are you at the table?
Quite a noisy table by the sounds of it.
Very, very. I might actually have to move. I'm so sorry about this. We are bursting at the seams in this office, and it's quite noisy.
Don't panic. Don't worry about it. I'll leave you to do that. I'm gonna run with this idea that, like, okay, I completely agree. Recruiters, talent has to be at the table. That relationship between HR and recruitment has to be a partnership, and then they have to go to the business and build that. Martin, you've done the job, and you said to me on Slack, you're like, Tris, I love this subject. I've done both a head of recruitment job and a head of people job.
Yeah.
What was the difference for you?
Firing. That's the difference. See, that is actually that to me is where the line is. So recruitment, we have a conversation. We do some workforce planning, don't you, in partnership with HR. Typically with a business, you could miss HR out of that piece though, and I think that's the awkwardness of some of the conversations we have. That HR partnership, we're still seen as, you know, just the grubby, the recruitment bit, the sort of second best bit, and all those other good things. It has changed in certain companies. Again, if I look at sort of more scale up, they're much more people. It's a people operations function. It's a bit more equal understanding. You've got to hire good people, develop good people, retain good people. But actually, yeah, the HR line for me has always been about firing, bizarrely, because other things are fluffy. So yeah, you've got the you know, sort of the feeding and watering bit of, you know, payroll and pensions and a bunch of other stuff. But for me, as a head of people, that's when you stop being fluffy. Talent acquisition can always be seen as being fluffy. It's the good stuff, isn't it? It's the good news of, hey, come and work here. We're great. Once you've got people into the building, though, that's where that disconnect can appear. You know, recruiters can be very good at recruiting, but we need to make sure that there's an alignment to what they're actually recruiting for, that they're authentic. They've actually hired people who can do the job. That's when the people role kicks in. So as a head of people, I've looked at organizations and gone, do you know what? These people don't fit. We need to manage them in some way. And in some cases, that's exiting the business. Recruiters never have to get grubby with that. And that, for me, is probably that line between, yeah, as a head of people, look at performance, look at fit for an organization, and do the bad stuff, which is asking people to leave the organization within a legally compliant framework, if anybody's watching, etc. You know what I mean? There's a process there, but that's the difference, isn't it? That the HR are on the hook for firing. Managers awkwardly are typically not on the hook for very much of any of it. So they have a relationship with, yeah, you recruit for me in partnership or not, and actually I've now got an HR problem. You fix that, HR. That's probably the real conversation about managers in organizations, about their responsibilities to manage people in all its truest sense. But again, probably maybe we extend that a little bit. But for me, yeah, fundamental difference: recruitment, good stuff; hiring, marketing. Hey, let's go and get you. The awkwardness of HR is at some point somebody will leave an organization when you don't particularly want them to, for whatever reason. Either they've done something that we need to fix, or they've left you, or they've done something, and there's a legal process around the back end of that, you know, and recruiters don't pick up the tab for any of that. It's all about the HR/people element then.
Cool. Joe, have you fired people?
Oh, well, actually, I think that here, the people talent is far more integrated in the recruitment of the current employees. So we call that employee engagement. So it's not just about the firing of people, but it's like recruiters recruit people to bring them into the org, and then HR or people are then responsible for ensuring that they stay. So in a way, that is recruitment of your current workforce. You need to make sure that you are currently engaging them, you're career pathing them, you are putting them through leadership and development, you know, and all of the things that they need in order to remain growing and vital to the organization. So when we think of HR, we always think about what exactly you said, Martin, which is all the paperwork, it's all the legalities, it's all the policing. But actually, the part of people that I love most is the engagement, because that really is like a recruitment function, but it's just in-house. So it's an inward focus rather than outward focus, if you will.
How do you feel about this, Sophie? Are we happy?
Yes, I'm happy because I'm in a meeting room. I can actually hear you guys now, which is fantastic. Let's just see if I get kicked out. It's yeah, one more day, and then we'll have meeting rooms galore. I can't wait. Yeah, I think you know, Martin's point about, you know, where sort of that, you know, sort of where HR kind of pick up the legal side of things is really good. Thinking about employee engagement as well, I think as recruiters, we're very focused on candidate experience and candidate engagement and candidate attraction. But and you know, I suppose somebody who perhaps does a hybrid role, maybe they see that as the starting point of the employee life cycle. It depends. Like where do you count the start of the employee life cycle? Do you count it as day one? And is that when the recruiter journey stops and the HR journey starts? Or do you see it as it starts from the minute somebody goes, I think I need a job. What's out there? And you know, does a Google search or speaks to some friends and finds out about your company. You know, what do people think about that?
I think certainly in my larger company experience of the sort of corporate, there's absolute demarcation between those various functions, and so there's a sourcing aspect, there's a recruitment aspect, there's an assessment aspect, which is typically run by talent acquisition. So I once had a KPI which was exactly, I will bring you that person at 9 a.m. on Monday morning, and there's the handover. That's the break point.
Yeah.
And then HR take over. But you are right that if you start to look at that journey and actually look at a life cycle of an employee, which is a horrible phrase, but sort of have to look at it. Not everybody stays in a company forever, do they? Have you worked somewhere forever? No. Yeah, that you actually can map out that end-to-end piece, and it is a circle, isn't it, that says that you've got first point of contact, acquisition of somebody, and you're bringing them through that experience as a candidate experience. They become an employee. And then there's an internal piece as well about internal hiring, about who picks that up. Typically, companies I work with, that's always still been a recruiter, because they're actually just looking internally, externally at the same time. So there is an internal piece of moving people around. Less about employee engagement. That tends to be about true retention and development. So there's an element there where the recruiter gets in, but then at some point those people leave. And then you know, some organizations think about their alumni and think about let's re-engage with those people at a later date. And again, that's the recruiter. So it's that cycle. I think it's about how far organizations take. And I think it's probably about what we were saying, that for corporates, there is definitely demarcation. You know, I think about places I've worked where they've had a TA function, they've got sort of HR generalist function, they've got a reward team, they've got an L&D team, they've got a bunch of other things, all in separate little silos, sort of working together, typically joined together by an HR business partner of some sort. So they're internally client facing, aren't they, talking to the business about what's required, pulling together those various pieces. But then you become just a cog in the machine, whereas newer, smaller companies definitely have that much more hybrid feel, I guess, to things. There's less demarcation. I think it's coming back to, I don't know, I think that the risk, anyone talking about whether recruiters should do onboarding. I think they should. I think there is something in there which says they're part of that. They're part of that journey. They're an employee like anybody else. It's about whether you just give them the tools to help. There's an awful lot of admin up front when you hire somebody, isn't there? They can do that. Recruiters love admin.
I mean, it fits with my experience of, just to contrast the large company experience. And I have worked in those environments, but in the smaller company experience, for example, previous employer where it was me and a head of people. The head of people was absolutely swamped doing lots of, some high level strategic stuff. And on a day-to-day basis, I manage, sort of all of the, recruiting and talent acquisition and things that you'd expect, but also a lot of onboarding. I manage the onboarding. I welcome people into the company. I, sort of encourage their hiring managers to, sort of take them around tours. I explain, pay dates, holiday booking, sort of all of those things that, maybe are a little bit more HR. And then also because I had that relationship with them as candidates, as they then transitioned into employees, because it was a smaller company, often they would come to me for HR advice. So I was mentioning, again, on my LinkedIn post this morning to Sophia and Vanessa, hi if you're watching, I've ended up acting almost like a HR triage, which you tend to recruiters often do in smaller companies. So I might not know the answer. I might not be anywhere near even vaguely qualified to explain to you how to sort out your tax problems with payroll. But I can certainly say, well, I know that you need to go and speak to this person and they will be able to help, or here's their contact details to the payroll provider. You need to bring it up with them. And I think that's, it becomes the line, it's how the line becomes very blurred in smaller companies.
I'd support what you said there, actually. In larger companies, that happens too. That relationship with the candidate is the thing that's drives the next step. So somebody might have an issue with tax, they might have an issue with payroll. Certainly for the larger corporates, if they've got any form of sort of HR shared service, there's typically not a name. It's a HR at whatever. Whereas the recruiter, they know them, they've got their email, they've got their mobile number, they know who they were, and there's definitely a triage where they turn up at this, I don't know how to do this, can you help me? And it's whether that's just because of poor process or poor comms or something, I don't know. Recruiters always, I think, will take responsibility for personal engagement, whereas HR, you tend to, it's like that awkwardness, isn't it? In a larger company, you're part of a support network without necessarily individuals knowing who you are and what you are. Maybe that's that. But it's whether those definitions are important or not. And I think sometimes they really are. They really matter. And sometimes they're just happy to be blurred. But maybe recruiters actually could step up a bit further and almost acknowledge that's what they're there to do because of that personal relationship.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it. Hi, Joe.
So here in the U.S., we pretty much try to get all of those reams of papers that need to be filled out. The tax forms and the immigration forms and all of the enrollment into benefits. We pretty much now do them through our ATS. So it sends out the offer letter through the ATS. People electronically sign it. It gets filed into that system, and then it sends out all of the paperwork they need to do. The future employee then sends all of that back. So all of the minutia of the paperwork, if you will, is done prior. They get connected to the, and sometimes this is all the same person, but, to the person who will walk them through the benefits, so any questions they have about benefits prior to them enrolling and prior to day one, they have that sorted. And so this is the kind of thing that happens pre-day one. So then a recruiter can just on day one, walk the person in, do all of the handshaking, tell the little stories that they've learned about, the new employee, and share that so that there can be some sort of a continuity, if you will. And so then once that happens, usually I like to follow up with a text midday. Have you found the restrooms yet? That sort of thing, just to let them know that I am rooting for them. I'm still there for them, and I will point them to the people who can answer all those questions. That way I don't have to be the resident expert on everything there is to know, from that side of the house, if you will. And that gives me the joy of just being the liaison, the connector, just really like making sure the culture of care, sort of is working, and then I leave all of the legalities and paperwork and everything to the people who actually manage that.
I love that. I think that it's so true that if you're a good recruiter, you care if your candidate has started on their first day and if they're enjoying their job a week in, and you want to go for a drink with them and meet them socially and be like, now we're colleagues, I'm not recruiting you.
Right.
It's a people relationship, right? Like, yeah, I think it's important to remember that the H stands for human. And as recruiters, we're just highly social. I know so many times I've got way too excited when I've hired somebody because I've just know, right, we're going to be like best friends as we're working together. As one of my customer success managers will tell you, apparently it was one of my most shameful closes. Where I asked her to join the company because not just because I know she'll absolutely nail the job, but because I think we'll be really good friends as well. I meant it. We still go for lunch now. But it's that real kind of people focused thing, which is funny when you sort of separate people and talent, but actually talent, we want to make sure our employees are loving the job that we've recruited them into. We care about that. And so it's natural that we'll check in, make sure they're all right. And, is there anything you need any help with, things like that. And then that's kind of when I've been wondering what to do about this kind of comes in. And that's where you find yourself sort of pulled towards the HR side of things.
What about top tips for being so that, like, I mean, my career has been very startup-y, and the biggest mistakes I've made is when I've pretended that I knew something about HR. What do you want to, like, what are the tips for the recruiters that are in that kind of sole recruiter role in terms of dealing with HR? I think, Sophie, you touched on a couple of things, but Joe, what are your tips for a recruiter that's on their own in the company, and how would you teach them to know when they shouldn't say the thing or
well, I think that there needs to be a happy hour. HR, we have all those memes, and there's always pictures of cocktails, pictures of wine, pictures of alcohol, right? So anyway, but I think that having a happy hour and everyone just chatting and really getting to become friends and understanding, like each person go around and say, well, this is what I specialize in. This is what I do. These are the things that if people have problems, and I think that for recruiters to hear that firsthand from HR and to say, and this is a problem when you don't do this, or when you did this, it made this so much easier. So that way we can be coached in the things that are helpful to them in their roles. And so again, it's all about collaboration and about understanding what each other does, because I found out that HR in my current company does things that I'm like, wow, I had no idea you had to touch that. And so it's like, I now am going to change this part of my process up to ensure that I get this information to you before we hit this point and you're scrambling. So in a way, we need to just continually have ongoing conversations, and it's always about cultivating relationships, and working relationships are no different. It's not us and them. There has to be an us, in the collaborative sense.
And Martin, as someone who's managed teams that do this, what do you think? I mean, how do you build that culture?
I'm not sure. Well, there you go. Probably talking to the wrong person now. I'm going to go. I've definitely worked in organisations where it's them and us, and it's in a lovely ideal world. Yeah, we're all one big happy team, understanding, I guess, that whole wheel again of what it's like to be a candidate, to be an employee, to be something. But in equal measure, where it goes wrong is typically there is that them and us. It's normally in larger organisations, to be really honest. I can't think of any of the smaller ones where it's been like that. But those corporate. We've got typically a head of HR sat on the main board. It's HR, it's not recruitment, it's HR. And because they're in HR, they absolutely think, well, I've got responsibility for talent acquisition. And that's an awkward conversation sometimes. It's about whether those people actually do know about talent acquisition or not. Sometimes they just don't. As you say, they don't need to know a Boolean search string, but they need to know the principles of, it's always seen as the grubby partner in that element. Other things are clean. Reward and recognition is clean. Learning development is clean. Recruitment involves going out there and finding people and talking to people, and it always is a little bit awkward. But I've certainly worked in environments where, because of that relationship, no matter what you do to try and break those barriers down, it's not collaboration. It is the high ground's taken by HR. The lower, the grubbier end of the things of activity, the tactical piece is going higher. You can try and work on things where you've got some common ground. You know, workforce planning being one of those elements, typically where both sides are really interested. But those conversations are definitely led by HR rather than talent acquisition, typically. So yeah, I'm trying to think something good there. I was going to come up with some really good, but it's all lovely. But actually, no, it can be really, really doomy and gloomy, where you've just got a them and us thing, and you're taking on the world. I wrote a blog years ago about that, and I can't remember the name of it now. But it's because at the moment in time, I was working for a large corporate, and the them and us was evident that the relationship that managers had with my recruitment team was really strong. It was really good, and yet the interesting fight was actually there was an internal fight between who's almost like who's got the cleverness, who's cleverer in talent acquisition, HR or TA. It's like, well, TA saying, well, we recruit, we know it, whereas HR saying, yeah, but you're just tactical, you're not strategic like we are. But demonstrating strategy in HR is quite difficult if you're being led by an organisation rather than by HR. Most businesses lead with the business to say this is our cunning plan, and everything subsequent to that is a bit more tactical anyway. Waffled on there.
The best projects I worked on at Indeed were ones where we had HR people and talent development people and recruiters and sourcers all at the same table working on things together, because I really actually believe that, like, I need the HR expertise. I've learned in my career by putting my foot in my mouth so many times that I need the HR brain, and I've learned to have a bit of a HR brain to turn on sometimes. And, Trish can be quite fiery, but I do turn on that HR brain. Sophie, do you turn on your HR brain sometimes?
Sometimes. I think one very interesting example, again from kind of previous roles here, I'm doing a very sort of specific growth recruitment project, which is awesome. One very interesting thing where you really do have to engage your HR brain is when you are recruiting a backfill. So going back to the part where, to talk about Martin's point about, talent doesn't fire people, which is fair. I've never fired anyone. I only do the fun bit where we welcome them in. But we will be involved because often I'll be given a heads up that maybe somebody isn't going to make their probation period or they're not hitting target, and I need to start thinking about, their replacement very quietly. And that's when it's all, and that is when it's really awkward, and that is when you do definitely have to put your HR hat on and be very poker faced, very right. Okay, we're doing this. Remember to step away from my desk when I have a screening call, things like that. That's probably a good example of when I've sort of been HR about things. Otherwise, I've just been very mindful to explain to my lovely colleagues that I would love to be able to help them with everything, but there's definitely somebody who's better at this. So this is the person who can help you. Let me know if I can, give anyone a nudge for you, things like that.
Yeah, I'm super keen to hear from DBR members how they deal with this as well. I know there's loads of you watching, so jump on the comments, ask us a question, and tell us how do you have a different hat? Do you have a recruiter hat? Do you have a HR hat? Do you have I definitely have a recruiter hat, a HR hat, a growth hacker hat, a sourcing hat. Sometimes I'm going to go write some code, so I'll put my coding hat on, and that's really bad, grubby one. But Joe, what about you? Do you have different hats? Is that a skill that you learn?
Oh, absolutely. I have had to work the entire gamut. And I will say that when I'm in talent and I get to exclusively be in talent, you can never take off the HR hat. And GDPR is a perfect example of that. We need to know what are the laws, what is governing our ability to contact candidates, stay in contact with candidates, and those sort of things. And so if we don't keep, that context, we are going to be going rogue and causing massive problems for our orgs. So it's really, truly important to keep that balance, if you will. It doesn't restrict us or restrain us. I think it empowers us to do things in the best possible way.
Yeah, and I just got pinged by Matt Bradburn as well, who said he's got loads of hats. Come on, Bradburn, get your hats out. Show us what they look like. I know you're watching. Martin, is it when you're? I'm interested to know and ask this question about hiring recruiters. Do you have an expectation of senior recruiters that they have an element of HR in their background?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's one of where that probably is most obvious is in that assessment piece. You know, we talk about talent acquisition. There's always that outbound, almost salesy marketing element of come and work here. We're great. Think about why you want to work here. All that piece. But fundamentally, recruiter's job is also to work out: are you any good at this thing? You know, are you the right fit for that job? And I guess it depends in different organisations where that is. I'm thinking about somebody's done some work with recently. You know, the recruiters' primary role was to do the acquisition, do the attraction piece, but then would also be involved in the on-site interviews. They're seen as the controlling point of those interviews of all things good. You know, recruiters do lots and lots of interviews. Most organisations go to their recruiters to train their managers on how to interview. An interesting thing. So I think that's the HR piece, isn't it? It's that assessment piece of are you a good candidate for this organisation? I think there's also more and more that cultural element as well, isn't it? Of not only have you got the skills that we're looking for, are you a good cultural fit? And it depends where that sits as well. Recruiters often lead with that. It's often in their domain, isn't it? To be the governor of all things culture, certainly on the way in, and make those judgment calls quite early on. So I suspect that's a real sort of that's HR to me, isn't it? It's not just about talent acquisition. Recruitment by default is still a sales activity. Whereas thinking about people rejecting people, I know, don't do that. Look, it's sales, whatever we do, come and work here, we're great. Whereas HR is less about sales, it's more about assessment. Rejection's interesting as well, isn't it? When candidates get rejected, there's an HR element to that, undoubtedly. People are very careful to make sure they're clear at why they're rejecting people. That's the HR piece kicking in. That's not just being a recruiter. I mean, it's good practice, but undoubtedly everything they say is almost caveated with a bunch of small print of it's not us, it's you. We're not going to tell you why. It's just you weren't quite right for the role. We wish you every success. Join our whatever. Whereas if they get that wrong, potentially that's back into that legal aspect of get that wrong, that gets your organisation into trouble. Sometimes with the acquisition piece as well. I've seen some really good stuff recently around age discrimination and looking at job adverts, looking at advertising, a bunch of other things. People don't mean to do it, but they've got it wrong, and somebody's they've been caught out a little bit. That's not HR, something completely different. But think about the difference. So I do expect senior talent acquisition people. If I'm hiring them for my team, I've definitely got to have at the back of their mind, what are we doing? Yeah, we're still the employer. And that's probably where the fundamental bit lies in there. We're giving recruiters responsibility for employment. And actually part of that is their governance and their ability to spot something that isn't quite right, that doesn't quite ring true. And it's managed and handled in an appropriate way, which is, keeps you out of trouble, keeps an organisation out of trouble. An HR, I won't name his name, but an HR VP I once knew that's how he saw HR actually. It was HR is just keeping the organisation out of trouble, whatever it is. Whether they've got managers doing daft things, recruiters doing daft things, people saying daft stuff. His job was to keep them out of court. They spent a lot of time in court, and maybe that was by the by. He wasn't great at what he did, maybe. So I won't. That's why I'm not named his name, but But that was also to do with their very litigious
I'm interested
nature.
by that, though. I think that's a cool point. Like you work for the logo, right? Oh, that's so Gary V. You work for the logo. So as a recruiter, you need to have that element of HR. You need to understand that your primary employer is your boss, is the brand, and you've got to do the best thing for the brand. I'm super keen to put the same question to you, Joe. Do you think that that it's a senior recruiter needs to understand that HR piece?
Oh, absolutely. Because without understanding, that we can really make their lives difficult, and that's why there's an us and them thing. So again, if I think that sometimes you need to make HR your friend, and then that way the help that you need, they're going to give you. Sometimes if I have a question and a candidate has asked me about benefits, I don't know all of the different plans, and all the different medical providers or whatever. So I can just simply ping someone and ask them. But because I've cultivated a relationship, they're going to respond right away, they're not going to make me wait till the next day or something because, we don't have a good rapport. So I think that that's imperative. And also I think about talent being like the face of the brand, the ambassador for the brand, if you will. And then I think about HR as being the foundation upon which we are bringing, people onto that brand. Their job is to make sure that that foundation stays sure and secure. And so we do need to respect that, and we get to do the fun stuff, which is really to shine, our culture. But their job is to ensure that that culture follows that employee from the moment they walk in the door till they get their gold watch at retirement, which we know never happens these days, but that's the concept. So.
You're interesting. You touched on that. The no one gets a gold watch anymore. Is that why HR and recruitment are getting closer and closer together?
I think that really it's just a shift in workforce. When you look at the fact that many people are able to telework. They don't even have to show up in offices, and some places don't even have offices because everyone works remotely. And the fact that and this is the sad part, which we need to fix somehow in-house, is that people can have more growth opportunities when they switch companies. And we have to look at it and say, why? Why are we not giving them that same opportunity in-house? Why are they being enticed away? So I believe that in a way, recruitment and HR need to partner together to try to solve that, because we bring them in the door, so to speak, and then HR is needing to retain them. But if they don't have recruitment skills, if you will, we need to kind of, there has to be an osmosis exchange at some point.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, because are you like hiring for the people that you're doing the job now, or are you going to hire them for the future in a startup? And in my role at the moment in this startup, like I'm teaching them that they don't want to hire someone to do the job right now. They've got to hire someone who can do the job in a year's time, because that's actually the person. That's where they're going to go. And do you hire them for where they're going to be in 3 years' time as well? Sophie, I mean, are you like, does that make sense to you? Is that like, you find that kind of like you're starting to, like, as you kind of grow as a recruiter, you're like, I'm not going to hire someone just to do this. I'm going to hire you the person who can do this and that and that in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's all well and good to say, so I'm recruiting salespeople at the moment. So I want to recruit somebody for our SME inside sales team. Now, I can recruit somebody that is stepping into the role, so going up. I can recruit somebody that's bang on, has been doing the job before, and will be happy to do that job again. But then my question is, how long are they going to want to do this level? When are they going to then want to step up again? Now, are they going to be able to step up within our company? And that is really important when actually, as a recruiter, I'm looking at jobs to go into, to be a recruiter for a company. It's important to me to make sure that there's proper like development plans, and that when I'm speaking to my candidates, I'm like, yeah, okay, so this is the job you're going to do now, but this is actually also, and it's a conversation I have with all my candidates, there is actually a structure in place for you to, what you'll be doing in a year, 2 years, longer than that, if that's sort of what you're after. And yeah, it is really important to consider the candidate's career development, because and it's something I think recruiters should be targeted on as well. Is it's great that you've filled all these roles, but are they still there in a year, 18 months, 2 years time? And that's a good measure of sort of not just like the quality of the person you're hiring. They're making probation period, great, but it's also a good measure of the quality of sort of learning and development and workforce planning, to think about that hybrid task that we do, and looking at, what are we putting in place to grow and develop people. As recruiters, we need to be having that conversation with our hiring managers and saying, that's great that you need this job being done now, but, where's this person go? Where's this amazing person you've interviewed and want to hire? Where are they going to go in a year's time? Are they going to go to the next level? Is there that appetite? Is there that role for them, or are they going to go to another company? Or for HR as well to think, right, okay, we need to be talking to the senior team and being like, right, we need to put some structure in place, some training, opportunities for people, internal mobility as well. Yeah, it is important, and it's I think that's probably a big area where, yeah, again, my HR hat comes on, such as it is, yeah, it's an interesting point.
Can I chip in there just about that,
Yeah.
that piece? I think that's really, I don't disagree with anything you've just said. Good news. However,
Okay.
I also think that managers often put pressure on recruiters, just hire here and now. I've got seats to fill them. That's the only conversation they have, particularly in sales, where they go, you're costing me money. If we don't have salespeople, we won't do X. And I think, so I think awkwardly, most recruiters, not all, get pushed in that direction because that's the pressure that they feel. Possibly about the organisation as well, the culture of the organisation. I think there's some really sales-driven places I've been, and that was it. That was how they were. Admittedly, they treated their salespeople pretty badly, so maybe that's a sort of reflection of everything. It was just it was a conveyor belt rather than actually trying to stop the conveyor belt and make things better. Also, I've also seen where recruiters have that conversation about, so, you know, where does this role go next? What are we going to do with these people? Our managers have genuinely just said anything, whatever you want to tell that person, that's what we'll do. And they don't mean it. And, you know, you finish out with a poor little recruiter who's now lying. He doesn't know that, you know, they don't know they're lying, but they've actually, told an untruth to a candidate on the way in by mismanaging those expectations, because those expectations have been set by a manager. And maybe that's a maturity thing with the recruiters. But also, sometimes it's very difficult. Most recruitment teams are tasked with fill these roles, because if you're not doing that, what am I paying you for? And I think there's an element of that sort of balance. It's coming. So I totally agree with what you said, but I think it's also quite difficult for recruiters to be able to put it on hold and say, let's do the right thing rather than the immediate thing. Those two things can be slightly different.
Should you do it? Should you be doing it? Like, should we be turning around to our managers and saying, no, you can't hire that person?
Yeah, why not? No, I don't know. I don't know. Yes or no? Yeah, maybe sometime. Well, yeah, sometimes. I saw it recently, actually. I saw a recruiter argue with a manager, the candidate had been through a whole process, but fundamentally the recruiter thought they weren't right. They said, you know what, they won't be here in 12 months' time. There's something about this. Some of the things they've said. But the team loved them and they still hired them. So it'd be interesting to see if that recruiter was right or wrong. But certainly, they did the right thing, I guess. They were true to themselves and said, do you know what, don't make that a hire, let me go and find you somebody better, rather than, great, you filled your headcount requirement today. They knew that they were doing the wrong thing, and I guess that's based on experience, but their ability to articulate that and have the authority to say stop is typically not there. Recruiters going back to type are pushed into the acquisition stage, and we'll take it from here. As a manager, their manager's still got to take responsibility for hiring that person. And if they say yes, then they'll almost in their head bit, even if the recruiter knows there's a little red flag gone off somewhere, you should not hire that person. So I think they should. I think it's interesting that most recruiters wouldn't do it.
I can see you nodding your head, Joe. Yeah.
It also depends upon what level of respect you have from that hiring manager. Because I remember I was new to this one organization, and I saw a prima donna aspect of one particular lead software engineer. And, that's one of those gut things sometimes, right? And so you try to articulate, well, what exactly did he say? What exactly did he do? It's like, well, it's just this combination of effects. But they liked his skill set so much. So they decided they would hire him, and they sent him on an interview with the end customer where he was going to work on site. And he ended up telling the interviewer that she was wrong on how she was approaching a particular problem that they were discussing. And she wrote back to me and said, after 11 minutes of being pontificated at, I don't want to have him walk through my doors ever again, And so it was like, okay, guys, so maybe in a way, can you understand that I was saying that I didn't think he would represent well? Despite the fact that he's got the mad skills, we should be hiring not just for the aptitude, but for the attitude as well. And so, and then they decided to send him on another one, and they ended up hiring him. And again, he was not there a year later. So it was like 9 months that he lasted. So I think that, again, it's really how we earn the respect of the hiring managers, because at some point, after that whole fiasco, 9 months later, they decided to start taking my reservations into consideration. And I think that's where it all has to happen. You have to earn the trust, of your hiring managers, so that when you make these recommendations in the best interests of their teams, they will see you as their partner.
Awesome. I think there's a couple of comments about that as well, right? They're saying like it's all about earning trust with HR, with your hiring managers, with everybody. Like,
yeah, Vanessa, for example, has said, as an in-house recruiter, you really do need to foster a great relationship with the rest of your HR team. You both need each other to get your jobs done, achieve your KPIs. And Danny Murphy, who said relationships with TA, with the wider HR team is so important. HR awards, services, business partners, etc. Especially when you're hiring in multiple different countries, there's lots of different requirements, nuances, things like that. And it's that relationship piece. And I think it extends to hiring managers as well. If you are willing and able to build a strong relationship with your hiring managers, with your HR team and your sort of business partners and stakeholders, then, you know, to go back to talk about earlier point, you have the power to push back. And Joe's exemplified that perfectly. She's, you know, sort of 9 months down the line, she's had more time. She's, you know, it doesn't matter sort of how long before or after, but she's got that evidence and say, well, you know, as we learn from this is the learning we can take. As we work together further, let's change the way we approach things. And it's, yeah, it's really important.
So I think we're getting to the end of the show.
We're running out of time.
No, it's been a good conversation.
It has.
I'm wondering, like, how do we resume it? Do we like, is there a way that we can sum up what you need to be a successful in-house recruiter, like with balancing between the fine line of HR and recruitment? What are your? I'm going to put it to one of you. Like, what are the tips? What do you think, Martin?
Buy a load of hats. Share your hats. I don't know. I think it's difficult. I think when we always talk about the recruiter role being difficult at the best of times. There's a lot of demands on a recruiter to be magical, find these magical candidates from thin air, make them amazing, and make them stay forever until such time as we don't want them anymore. I think definitely where my life has become easier is that genuine partnership, which is really cliched, about a partnership with HR and talent acquisition. And if you can get to that point, that's probably the real thing, isn't it? That you're less fussed about that line. We talked about the line to begin with. And that the shades of grey in the middle are actually okay, because you can, as long as there's, I guess, that sort of respect of, you know, as an HR person, you understand this much more about the employee engagement as we go through, and just acknowledge that talent acquisition are good at going to find good people and work in partnership. And I think that can be great. I think the reality is in some organisations that really, really, really doesn't work. So yeah, that's probably the top tip. Go and make friends with your HR partners. And make real friends like Sophie does with every candidate you meet. Just bring in your friends to work, and then it becomes life. That's probably the second tip, which I've stolen. She's just hire friends. Maybe that's the real answer. I hope you never have to sack any of them. That's going to be the awkward. Never sack your friends. I don't know. There you go.
Probably a simplistic view, but I mean, I think the relationship bit is definitely very important. Much easier to wear a lot of hats if you've got a good hat stand to rest them all on. If we're going to go metaphors, I think, yeah, it's a difficult job. It's a very, very thin line at times. But if you have good relationships, then you can definitely, sort of work that balance in your candidate's favour. And then they will want to be your friend because they see how hard you're working for them.
Joe, anything else to add?
Oh, Martin, I love your hats. We started with the hats, right? So basically, we're seen by HR as having the matador hat, you know. It's like, all right, bring on the bull. Here's the red cape here thing. And then we kind of look at them as having the bowler, right? They're the stuffy ones, right? And then they look back at us and they really think that we are wearing the bohemian crocheted hat, right? Because we're just not, we're just going on with our own flows. But I really think I would love to see the Slack channel just fill up with things you have done that have been successful in encouraging, great relationships with, between HR and talent. And I think that if we flood that, we'll start seeing what other people are doing that works, only put in not your good ideas, but things that you've done that worked. And then that way we can learn. It will be where maybe we won't do the exact same thing, but it will actually spark something we can do within our own orgs.
Oh my God, I love that. I think that if we keep on sharing these stories with each other, then we will all build our relationships.
Absolutely.
The grey area is not grey. You're going to have to do some HR as a recruiter. Don't get angry. Don't get upset with people when they mistake you for working in HR. Instead, just communicate, talk, and share share what works. Like that's gonna really help each other. So amazing. That's super cool. Sophie Power, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. I've got to go do an interview now, so I've got to run. But it's been amazing. Thank you so much, Joe and Martin, for joining Tris and I, and our hat metaphors. And yeah, I think it's been really interesting.
Joe Weech, thank you very much. Martin Dangerfield, that was awesome. We'll be back in the new year. No, we've got one more show before the end of the year. One more show before the end of the year. No plans yet. I'll tell you about it soon. Yeah, drop a comment. Thank you very much. I'll turn the broadcast.